In today's tutorial, we are going to be focusing on the back side of page 4. So I'm going to set my page aside for now and bring in my cardstock pieces to build my page. The first piece measures 7 1/4 by 3 inches. On the 3-inch side, we're going to score this at 1/2 inch along the bottom edge. Then for the second piece, it measures 7 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. On the 5 1/2 inch side, we are going to score this at 1/2 inch along the top edge. Then I have a piece that measures 7 1/4 by 4 1/2 inches. On the 4 1/2 inch side, we are going to score this along the bottom edge at 1/2 inch. And then I have one piece that measures 9 inches by 3 1/2 inches. We're going to score this one at 1/2 inch on the 3 1/2 inch side down at the bottom. Then I'm going to take my scissors and miter the ends on all of these 1/2 inch tab sections, use my bone folder to burnish those folds, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to assemble this page. I'm going to be starting with my 9-inch long flap, placing my adhesive down here on my 1/2 inch tab, and then this is going to end up being a long pocket across the entire bottom portion of the page. So once I have my adhesive on, I'll go ahead and line up that score line with the bottom edge of the page, and then make sure my sides are lined up nice and straight and adhere this down. Then I'm going to take my 7 1/4 by 4 1/2 inch page. Using my centering ruler, I'm going to mark the center, so it's 3 5/8 inch from the center. And I'm going to apply my adhesive here to this tab, and I'm going to be placing this larger piece right on top of that pocket we already have on the page. So just lining up the score line with the bottom edge and then burnishing this one down. Then I'm going to take my 5 1/2 inch flap, apply my adhesive to my 1/2 inch tab section, and this is going to be the flap on the top of the page. So we're going to line this score line up with the top edge of the page, and the left and right sides we're going to make sure are lined up with the flap that we just placed on the bottom of the page. Once that's on, we'll go ahead and burnish this down. Now, before I adhere this piece on, I'm going to cut this first with my decorative paper. So I have this from my 12 by 12 paper that I'm going to first adhere down here, and I'm going to adhere this so that it is just like this. So there is that small uniform border down here towards the bottom. And then on each side, I've got this little tiny border. I'm not going to worry about this yet because I am going to fussy cut around this. So I just want to make sure that I line up this bottom portion and the side portions. Now, once I have this on, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to start here. And I'm just going to leave that small border of my paper. And I'm just going to go ahead and fussy cut around this top portion. So this is what my piece looks like. I do have these bottoms rounded as well. I'm going to flip this down, and then I'm just going to cut these at an angle to get that curved portion off. It'll be a little bit easier to place my pocket on. So once I have that, I'll go ahead and apply my adhesive First, just to this 1/2 inch tab section. And then I'm going to use my centering ruler here to line everything up so that this is in the center of the page. And actually, I forgot, so the edges are still at 7 1/4, so I didn't need my centering ruler. So I'm just gonna line up these sides and then that score line with the bottom edge of the upper flap. So this paper, or this little flap that we just cut, is lined up with the upper flap. And then I'm going to wait until my decorative papers are on here, then I'll apply adhesive here, fold this up, and this will form a small pocket. So that's it for the build. We're going to go ahead and continue with the decorative papers. Now, before I put my decorative papers on, I'm going to start with my ribbon closures. So I have 2 pieces of ribbon that are cut to about 8 1/2 inches. For the first piece, I'm going to place it in the center down here on this bottom flap. And for the second piece, I'm actually going to place it on the underside in the center on the top flap because I've already put my little tiny pocket on my upper flap and I forgot to put the ribbon on. I'm going to place it on this underside and it won't be a problem. It'll be just fine. But I'm going to close this and make sure that it is in line with the other ribbon. And now we can go ahead and start placing our decorative papers. To start, I've taken this 8 by 8 paper here and I have cut this, I cut a 1 inch strip off the side here. Then I've cut this to 4 3/4 inches and it's going to go here. Then I'm going to apply my adhesive here to the sides of this and fold this up to make a pocket. Then this piece, I'm going to be placing down here at the bottom of this pocket. And then I have this piece of, this is left over from the 12 by 12 paper. I've trimmed this down to 7 1/4 by 3/4 inch. I'm going to place this up here on the top. I really want to use this paper, it just wasn't large enough, so I'm going to make it work by putting this piece here. And then from my 12 by 12 paper, I've cut one of these little labels and I did place it on a piece of my lavender cardstock and cut around it. Then I'm going to place this here as a decorative element. Once those pieces are on, I'm going to open up here first. So for this part, I've got my 12 by 12 paper that I have cut down to 2 3/4 by 8 3/4. And I'm going to place this right here on the front of this flap. Now I cut my piece too short, not thinking because I was thinking about the measurements for this flap, but the measurement that you need for this piece, it was from the 12 by 12 paper. I just left it the length that this is here. It is 4 3/4. And then you'll want to cut your piece to 8 3/4 inch. I'm just going to piece mine together and make it work, but we're going to place this piece here on the top of the page. And then once it's on, we're going to go ahead and apply adhesive down the sides of this flap to turn this into a pocket. Starting on this upper flap, I have one of my fussy cutting sheets that I had cut to 4 1/4 by 4 3/4, and this is going to go here in the center for the photo. And then from one of those pieces of the green paper, I have cut this to 1 3/8 by 4 3/4. And one piece is going to go on each side. Now I did slightly trim this down a little tiny bit less than 4 1/4 so that these would fit on here with a small border or a small gap between the pieces. And then I have this from the fussy cutting sheet. This has the wood backing on it, and I'm going to place this piece here only adhering down this left side so that photo will tuck underneath. Then for this bottom flap here, this was left over from my 12 by 12 paper. I had used all the other pieces. I had cut 5 of them for a previous page, and I had 1 piece left. So I cut this down. So this measures 4, because it's 4 1/4. No, this is 4 inches by 3 3/4. So I'm going to be placing this here in the center. Then I have 2 more pieces of this green paper. You want to cut these to just slightly larger than 1 3/8, but you don't want to go completely to 1 1/2. And these are 3 3/4. Then we're going to place 1 piece on each of these sides here. So again, there is that small gap between the pieces. And then I have this piece here that I've fussy cut from the sheet here. And I'm going to place this down here and only adhere down the right side. So in another video, we will add our photo mats to this pocket and to this pocket. For right now, I'm just going to close up my flaps and tie my ribbons into a bow to hold everything closed. Now that all 4 of our pages are complete, I'm going to go ahead and put them in the album. So I have my cover here. I'm going to be very careful about that front cover and not smash it down. So I'm going to actually take maybe something small. One of these should work. And I'll just set that there underneath the corner of the album so that it is kind of balanced. I'm going to be starting with the back side of my pages just because it'll be easier than the front side, since that cover, it does have some embellishment on it. And I'm also going to be putting some pieces here before I put my pages in. Now I will be starting with these pieces just because it's easier to do before my pages are in. So I have this 8 by 8 paper that I'm going to be using to complete this step. So if you happen to want to use any of these images and you don't want to put paper here, you don't have to, especially because it does have that lavender paper. It won't be the end of the world, but I am going to cover mine. So what I'm going to do here is cut 13 pieces that are 3/8 of an inch by 7 1/2 inches. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to add 1 piece here, 1 piece here. I'm going to skip the hinge that has the mitered corners. Then I'm going to come in here and add 3 pieces here on these flat pieces, skipping the hinge with the mitered corners, adding 3 more, skipping the mitered corner section, adding 3 more, and then adding 2 more here. So I will come back once all of my pieces are on, and then we will add our pages in. I have all of my parts covered now on my hinges, so I'm going to begin adding my pages in. Now I have my pages stacked from page 1 to page 4, so I'm going to flip over in this direction so that they're in the correct order. I'm going to take my adhesive and apply it to the entire 1/2 inch hinge section on the tops, and I'm going to do this on both sides. So if you are using double-sided adhesive here, just make sure that the entire hinge piece is covered. If you're using wet glue like I am, don't put too much. You want this to be completely covered, but you don't want so much that it's going to warp your paper. So I use a little bit of glue and I spread it out with the tip. Now I'm going to take this. This is the back side of my page, so I'm going to flip it over to the front, place my fingers here in this pocket to get it opened, and then I'm going to slide it right down on that hinge, and it shouldn't be able to slide any further than that score line. So once it's in place, I'm going to go ahead and press this down. I'm going to flip over just to make sure it is also lined up on the back side. Then I'm going to just use my finger here to press this down. I guess my bone folder's right here. I could use it as well. So I'm going to press this down to adhere this to my page or to my hinge. Now I'm going to repeat that process with my 3rd hinge and my 3rd page. So again, just placing my adhesive first on both sides of my 1/2 inch tab section. This is the back side of my page. This is the front side of my page, so I want to make sure to place this correctly. Opening that pocket up and sliding it right down onto that tab. All the way to that score line, then pressing down, flipping over and pressing down. Now I will repeat that same process with the second hinge. So first applying my adhesive on both sides. This is the back side, this is the front side, so I'm going to make sure it's the right orientation and then get that pocket open, place it over top of that hinge and down to that score line. Pressing it down, folding it over, and then burnishing this onto that hinge. And then I'm going to repeat that same process with my first hinge and my first page. So let's go ahead and put the adhesive on first. This is the back side, so I want to make sure that I have it in the correct orientation. Opening that pocket up. And then placing that pocket right down on that hinge. All the way to the score line, and pressing that down on both sides. So now we have our pages in our album, and you'll see that I definitely still have plenty of room to add my inserts and decorate the front and back cover and add some additional embellishments. Now the last thing I'm going to do in this video is decorate the inside front and back cover. So I have cut 2 pieces of cardstock. They're already scored, but they measure 7 inches by 7 5/8 of an inch. Now on the 7-inch side of one, you're going to score 1/2 inch on the left-hand side, miter those corners and fold on that score line. On that second piece, you're going to score on the 7-inch side at 1/2 inch on the right-hand side, miter those corners and fold on that score line. We're going to take the piece with the score line on the right-hand side and apply adhesive to this 1/2 inch tab. Now this one is going to be for the front cover. So what I'm going to do with this one is take this score line and line it up with the fold on the page. Now I'm going to just do this to make sure it doesn't go too far into the fold. Once I have it on my page, I will go ahead and make sure that it is centered top and bottom. I'm going to hold my cover up in the air just because it has all that dimension and I don't want to flatten it out or squish anything. Then I'm going to go ahead and adhere this down to that front cover. I'm going to take my little punch and stick it here again, just like I did previously, just to make sure that this is raised up. Now I have this piece, I hated to cut into it, but I wanted to be able to have a uniform piece for the front and the back, and this was the big enough piece. So I've cut 2 pieces of this paper. The paper was, so there was, you know, if you looked at it this way, 1 piece in each direction. So I've cut 3 1/4 inch piece by 7 1/2, 3 1/4 by 7 1/2. And I'm going to place this piece here at the edge. Once this is down, I'm going to apply my adhesive here and here across this flap and fold this over to form a pocket. Then for this piece, I've taken this 8 by 8 paper and I have first cut a 1/2 inch off the bottom And then I've trimmed this down from the left-hand side. I've cut this, and this measures 6 1/4. This is going to go right here on the front of my pocket. Once those papers are on, I'm going to go ahead and flip now to the back side. I'm going to take my piece of cardstock. I'll apply my adhesive to my 1/2 inch tab, and this is going to be a mirror image basically of my front cover. So I am going to start by placing this piece right down next to my fold. And then I'll burnish it down. Then I have my 3 1/4 inch piece that I'm going to be placing here. I've actually cut mine a little tiny bit too short, which I will make up for. I'm going to place this here, apply my adhesive, fold this into my pocket, and then I'm using this 8x8 paper. For this one, I've cut a 1/2 inch off the bottom, 7/8 of an inch off of both sides so that this is centered, and it's 6 1/4 inches. And I'm going to place this here on the front of the flap. Once these are covered, I'm going to go ahead and just flip all of my pages over to the front. And we are finished now with this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we're going to go through and add all of the additional inserts and some embellishments to the pages and just finish up the album itself. So if you are just joining the tutorial series, don't forget to look in the description box below where you can find the links so you can purchase all of these products from the Scrap and Create website as well as the chipboard pieces from my Etsy shop. I'll see you in the next tutorial.